Hi, everyone, and welcome. My name is Kevin Lin, and I serve as chair of the WashU Pride Alumni Network, or WUPAN. On behalf of WUPAN and the WashU Alumni Association, I am very excited to welcome you to Heart and Humor, featuring two outstanding members of the WashU alumni community. Before we begin, I'd like to explain the format for today's session. You will only hear and see myself and our presenters, and the webinar will last for about an hour. Following the conversation, we will have time for questions, and I definitely encourage you to participate by asking questions at any time by typing in our Q&A box. Thank you to those of you who have already submitted some great questions via your registration. And during the Q&A session, we'll get to as many questions as we can. This webinar is being recorded, and we will share it on the Alumni Association YouTube channel and on the website following the event as well. Now, it is my pleasure to introduce and welcome Brian Fiedler. Brian is the Associate Vice Chancellor of Advancement Programs at Washington University in St. Louis. He is a 1997 graduate of the College of Arts and Sciences, has been with University Advancement for the past 15 years, and has served as the advisor to the 13th Junior Honorary since 2008. Please join me in welcoming Brian Fiedler.
Thank you, Kevin. And thank you to WUPAN for the sponsorship of this important work that you're doing in our community. Thanks to everyone for joining us today. I want to extend a special welcome to all of our reunion celebrants. I can tell you that while we're so sorry that we can't be together in person this spring, we are so glad that you're joining us virtually, and we can't wait to welcome you back to campus when it's safe to do so. As Kevin mentioned, we'll spend the first half of our time in conversation before we open it up to the audience questions. And thanks to all of you who posed some really insightful questions in advance. We will definitely try to get to them if there's time. But we also want to hear questions that arise from our discussion. So please do use that Q&A box for your questions, and we'll get to them in the second half of our time today. So let's dive in. It's my pleasure to welcome Julia Lindon. Julia is a writer, comedian, producer. She's a creator and star of Lady Liberty, a TV pilot that premiered at the Tribeca Film Festival and was a finalist for the Sundance Episodic Lab. She specializes in comedy writing, podcasts, and branded content. She's written for Warner Media, Above Average, and Cosmo. In addition to her role on Comedy Central's Detroiters, Lindon co-hosts Happy Campers, the ultimate summer camp themed podcast. She has worked on the production team of NBC's Saturday Night Live, Comedy Central's The Daily Show with Jon Stewart, and Fox's Last Man on Earth. So Julia is also a 2013 graduate of the College of Arts and Sciences. Her major was anthropology, which seems really fitting, given that anthropology, like comedy, has its roots in the study of what makes us human. She was very active on campus outside the classroom as a member of Kappa Kappa Gamma sorority, a member of the long-form improv group Suspicious of Whistlers, and the way I came to know Julia through her involvement as a member of 13 Junior Honorary. So we'll talk more about her WashU experience and how that's played a role in the life that she is composing. Julia, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for being here, everyone. Also, sorry I turned my video on to then listen to my credits and then go, oh yeah. I think my cue to turn on was supposed to be later. I'm new to webinars. Hi,
This
everyone.
this is improv at its best.
Oh,
Hey,
good. Okay, there's no
so,
messing up.
right.
Thank you
So
for that lovely introduction, Brian, and for chatting with me and Zooming this lovely Monday.
I'm very excited for this. This is a long time in coming. Okay, so for those that have not seen it, can you explain a little bit more the story of Lady Liberty and what inspired you to create this film?
For sure. So we call it a coming out and coming of age comedy. And basically meaning it's the story of a young 20 something who just moved to New York City, much like me after graduating from WashU. And she is both kind of exploring the world of comedy, trying to find her voice there. And for the first time, she's exploring the queer community and coming out and trying to find friendships in that world and relationships. But all in all, it's all tied into identity and growth and who you basically become after you leave the sweet little campus of Washington University in St. Louis.
Sure. And what inspired you? How did Lady Liberty come about? And what was your motivation for putting this together?
Yeah, so I'll get into it, I'm sure, as we talk about how WashU influenced me and how I found comedy. But I've been passionate about creating whatever type of project, whether it's an improv scene on a stage on campus or an actual episode of something that goes live to the public. So I really wanted to make something that combined a whole team of people, that wasn't just a shoot in a weekend kind of thing. And then use it as a way to connect with people, but also show off my own voice as a writer, a performer, a producer. So it was a script that I wrote a couple years after college, and it was something that I then shared with people in my network in New York. And we found a group of mainly women to come together, make the project, and then take it onto the festival route, where we started premiering at Tribeca Film Festival, and we went to a bunch of different LGBT festivals around the country and outside of the country, and even one festival down in Oaxaca, Mexico, which is a lovely spot for alcohol.
Check out that. That's fantastic. Well, so in the first scene, or one of the first scenes at least, Shay, your character, awkwardly comes out to her gynecologist, who is unfortunately completely unprepared. This scene is, like many in the film, comes out of your own experience. And so a two-part question. One, talk about the scene and it's important to the film.
Yes.
And two, can you comment on the experience of not only sharing, but acting out moments of your life in front of an audience?
Yes. And I'll start also with part 3 of that question, which is, did I ever think years after college we'd be chatting and you'd say the word gynecologist to me and I would have a straight face. So I'm enjoying this moment so much. Okay, so what is that scene, and why is it important? Good spot to start. Yeah, so it really sets the tone. If you guys have checked it out, otherwise, hopefully I'll be charming enough that you will want to look at it after this. But it sets the scene, both to kind of get that tone that I was really searching for in the piece, and ideally in this conversation, of heart and humor, where you're seeing this really vulnerable version of Shay who is trying to find her voice. She's not volunteering information where she's like, oh, I don't need condoms, I'm not planning to have sexual relations with men. She's just kind of like letting the world happen, and she's trying not to tell her truth, but she's getting pushed by the questions that people, whether it's a gynecologist or your mother or your friend, that people push because they need to know, they want to know. And when she gets pushed, she cracks and she tells this adult kind of like her truth. It's probably not the situation that Shay wanted to express herself the most in, but it's the one that happened, and it helps her break. And so I thought that was important to share because that felt really true to my own life. One, because I had a really, really similar experience as the one depicted in the film. And two, because I had tons of those kinds of experiences of, getting to the point where you need to be honest with yourself and with the people who are looking you in the eye. And it always comes at weird, uncertain times. And it's not just sad or it's not just wonderful. It's a mix of all those things. And if you're myself, it also has plenty of fun little awkwardness in it.
And engaging from the reaction, that wasn't in your file. This is
Ooh, should we reshoot the scene with you as the gynecologist?
well, so as it relates to this, though, there are a lot of films and books that talk about the pain and the trauma that folks experience as part of the coming out journey. And so, you chose to present that as a comedy, but also something that skillfully addresses the question of what it means to navigate one's identity, both cultural and sexual. So what led you to that decision, and what were the choices you had to make both as writer and producer to make sure that you did capture the heart and the humor of this experience?
Yeah, I think an important thing was the language that I kind of learned at WashU that I leaned into was telling things more through a comedic manner, because I felt like, one, that came more naturally to me, and two, people actually seemed to listen and want to engage with it. On campus, people were maybe more likely to show up to a comedy show where they could like just hang out. And I was going to say like bring a beer, but I'm like, that wasn't a thing.
Except that
Also fun fact at WashU, I didn't drink like until my junior year, which is so fun. Because I sound like I'm like very into alcohol in this talk. It's my second reference, but I was like a sorority girl who was sober and just enjoying my ride. But now it's quarantine and I love a good white wine. Back to wherever I was. Where was I?
No, I think, again, balancing that from the standpoint of both,
Yes.
it's the heart, it's the feeling, it's the emotion you had going through it, but being able to look at it through a lens of humor and not take the situation too seriously.
Yeah, something that really helped in the making of Lady Liberty was that I teamed up with this woman named Taylor Nagel, and she directed the pilot. And so we worked alongside each other, and her background was in documentary film and not comedy. She just like enjoyed working with comedians. And so having someone to really brainstorm with and to ground the experience was really helpful. And that felt like a way to bring that in, like someone was forcing me to kind of be like, why are you saying this? What are you really trying to say? And then I would kind of speak to that as much as I could.
There's the heart to the balance, the humor. That makes total sense. And then in terms of the movie itself, or the film pilot, why was it important to portray this as the beginning point of Shay realizing her sexuality?
Yeah, I think that's great. And I would almost say, and I have spoken about it like that, like it's the beginning, where you see her like come out to the first adult in her life. But I think like the beginning, that's always like a fun question too, where it's like, the beginning was probably when she first started realizing, or when she was younger, and all of that. I think what's so important to me is that, this is that first little seed. When I talk later about like what I'd like to do with this pilot and how I want to continue the story of Shay's journey, is that it was really important for me to show the process of coming out. It wasn't just like, hey, here's this person who is super confident. That's kind of the story I want to tell, ideally, about like where she gets to be at the end. But it was really important to see her kind of in this lowest point where she's like, she knows what's coming. What's coming is that she needs to figure out how to accept herself and share that with the world, and then grow into, I think she's nervous that she's going to become like a different person maybe, but really she's going to become like more of who she truly is. But we see her in the beginning. This is like the beginning of when she realizes like, oh yes, this is really happening. And she's really scared, but she's also really excited. And you start to get that energy coming from her as the film goes on. And she starts meeting people who make her feel safe and make her feel seen and make her see the kind of more confident version of herself that she wants to be.
Lady Liberty. So we can talk about kind of other career stuff, because I know you've got a lot of things in the fire, but in terms of like next steps, what do you see for Lady Liberty? Why don't we go there?
Yeah, so we had a really great festival run, and it was all pre-COVID. So we were really lucky to show up, have our screenings, meet other filmmakers, chat with producers and distributors. So the idea is that we screened it and premiered it as a pilot episode. And so, you guys watch a ton of TV, I'm sure everyone does now, and you'd find something on Hulu, like a 10-part series or 10 episodes, and then you get season 2, season 3. So that would be the ideal with a show like this, to have this be where Shay starts, and then we follow Shay and the other characters in the pilot, going down 2 paths. 1, her growth as a comedian and finding her voice there, and 2, her growth as a queer woman in New York. And ultimately, throughout the season, we're going to see those things glide, crisscross together a lot, and talking about who she really is on stage and how that informs her. So the ideal is I moved out to LA a couple months ago. So now I'm just waiting for a big producer to knock on my door and say that it's time to go make a bunch more episodes. But that's kind of the goal, is to keep telling that story and get out there and find the right partners to do that with.
That's great. Do you end up having the storyline pretty well fleshed out, or is it something that it's, let's see if there's an interest? I mean, how far do you have to map that into the future to shop that
Definitely mapped it really far. So it was like I had spent years, working on just the script and just that one episode. So then once that was done and we started going on the festival circuit, about a year of that, we knew that my partner, Taylor, the director in the project, we decided to really think about that ahead of time, so that when we showed up to those festivals and people were like, this is cool, what else do you see happening? We had the elaborate pitch doc that explained all the character arcs, what every episode is about, how Shay grows from season 1, 2, 3, and all the other characters. So we definitely did that work, which was a lot of fun.
Oh, that's exciting. Well, there may be some other questions that come about Lady Liberty in the Q&A, but I also am interested as we kind of think about your WashU experience overall. So
yeah,
what did your time as a student, like what the activities you were involved with, the things that you were doing, how was that part of your development and where you are today?
it's super, super essential and important. Finding comedy, like if you spoke to me when I was 17, 18, I was obsessed with WashU. I had applied early. I was so excited to go. But I was confident about that and clear about that. But what did I want to do with my life? I had no idea. And I probably would have said law school, because I come from a house of lawyers. And about, like a week into school, I auditioned for the improv groups, all 3 of them, and was so lucky to find a home with what you said, the long form group Suspicious of Whistlers. And I respected the people above me in that group so much, and like felt immediately part of a family, felt really excited to be on stage, really excited to show up to all the practices. And it just gave me that bug of writing and performing and joking around with other people who just wanted to like create and make believe. So that was key. And it then kind of made me think about how can I get real workplace experience in comedy. And so then I would use my summers when I was a student at WashU to head back to the East Coast, to New York, where I was originally from, and do internships in New York City. So I did one at a stand-up comedy club in Times Square called Caroline's on Broadway. And then I did one at The Daily Show when Jon Stewart was still hosting there. So just getting these great experiences and then heading back to school that much more, informed about what I wanted to do, what I wanted to work on. A couple things, you missed in the intro, just to call you out, only because I saw that she maybe is on this call. A shout out to Heidi Kolk, because I was also a second major in American Culture Studies. And that was a spot where I was able to dabble and really pick and choose the kinds of classes that I wanted to take at WashU that would help me. I took this great women in comedy class. I took film writing class, screenwriting classes, filmmaking classes, acting classes, American politics. Took a great class called The History of the American Teenager. Just like everything that when you put it all together feels like a I mean, at the end, Heidi told me that I basically did a major in American comedy, is I think what she called it. And I was very excited to learn that at the end. My parents were like, cool.
What's
No, I'm
next?
kidding. I think it's cool.
That's great. Well, so in terms of that, though, if you said that, had you done performance at all in high school, or was it truly?
No, I was like I was like a model U. I was just into leadership, like model UN and peer leadership and tour guide things. But no, I stayed away from the drama world. I think because I'm dyslexic and don't like memorizing lines, so I was never in the place. Thus, improv, lovely.
Improv. Sure. No, that's great. And then what about other things? I mean, again, you were in a sorority, you were involved with 13. What
Yes.
did those experiences do to kind of shape Julia Lindon today?
They did so much. So, I mean, I had a joke after college, I mean, some people talk about, they talk about at WashU in general with every industry, but it's also talked about a ton in the entertainment industry about like networking and what is networking and how important is it? And it's like, it's important because like people make decisions and you work with people and all that. So in some, as much as I would say like sorority and fraternity life, you know, excellent parties, excellent themed events where I got to wear costumes. But like I met so many people, and there was a version of that that like is networking, you know, above and below, and just really fun people who you're going to events and you're just there to kind of enjoy each other and get to know each other and build community. So there is some elements from that I feel like I did get from Greek life, along with a lot of leadership, like leading the you know, being like the new member educator for Kappa and getting to kind of shepherd in the new pledges, which was like very fun, and getting to play like a mama bear figure type thing, because I had, you know, worshipped the girls who were above me and thought that was so cool. And then 13 was, you know, absolutely amazing, because as much as I loved the energy of WashU, the friendliness of bopping around and getting to wave to everyone on campus, something that I felt like I, you know, wanted to find within my own year. I think I had it with my improv world, where we were really connected and a family, but we were all in different grades and studying different things. Finding the community of the 13 other juniors who were on 13 with me, who, you know, we were all on that same path. And when we were all graduating, we were all thinking, you know, what city are we going to go to? Where are we going to, you know, we were just aligned. And then we were aligned on this one big task, which was putting on the carnival. And I really did find so many of my best friends from WashU in that too. And that was super, I think, important socially, to just feel like you have a spot and people have your back. So I really cared about that. And yeah, and it introduced me to you, which is my proudest accomplishment of WashU.
Boy, do you have a lot of
having your email.
No, so I mean, what I experienced in watching you that year was really creating your very own role. I mean, doing programming and bringing in all of these groups from the outside. I feel like, again, whether that's improv or other things, you were really forging a path that had not been forged in that way before you. So it was fun to watch that grow, and you've left a legacy there. So that's great.
Thank you. So nice.
One of the pre-submitted questions that came up as we look at the, you know, career-wise, you talked about your interest in improv and interning, but how did you go about getting your start in the business? And you know, you've kind of talked about how you knew you wanted to pursue comedy, but how did you decide, you know, from a vocational perspective, this is what you wanted to do?
Yeah, I think that summer, it was probably after my sophomore year of WashU, but I interned at The Daily Show, and I think, you know, it was such a mix there of, you know, John was like the most high profile talent, and he was kind of on his own level. But I really got to also observe like the writers there, the producers, the production assistants, the other correspondents who, like John Oliver and Samantha Bee, they were also there at the time. And I saw people come in at 9 a.m. and I saw people leave at like 6:30, and they had made a show by the end of the day, and people were watching it. And I was just like, that is so cool. Like, they're not just doing nothing, they're actually doing things. And and I was just really inspired and wanted to be a part of something like that. And it just made me feel like, compared to the summer before where I worked at a comedy club in the back room, and I was like, all the action was at night, and it was fun, but I was like, this is not really my pace. I don't think this is like sustainable, and I couldn't see myself in that world as much. The experience like behind the scenes of the Daily Show definitely made me feel like it was something that was not attainable, but just something that I wanted. It always felt very hard to obtain, and continues to, but it felt like somewhere that I could be happy for sure.
Sure. And then go ahead, please.
Yeah. And so then I can go from there. Then I went back to WashU, was like, I need to do more of this. And I did a lot of research, and it was an alum who was on 13, probably 10, 15 years before me, Matt Picard, who's fantastic. And I met with him. He had been on 13 too, and took me under his wing and told me about the Page program because he'd been working at NBC. And I had heard about it from 30 Rock and Kenneth the Page. And I was like, I'm not Kenneth, but I want to do all the things that Kenneth does. So I, chatted with a lot of people. There was another WashU alum who I think was currently in the program, Erica Berger, who's also fantastic. And she had my back and helped me. I got in there and I had my interviews, but then afterwards, shot me that little text of like, we might be working together. And then afterwards, she was like, don't tell anyone I sent you this text. But like, just so happy and always feeling kind of connected to WashU through that whole process, because they really were, supporting me through it all. And so I found myself at NBC in the Page program right after college, which was definitely a dream job. And I was working at Saturday Night Live, which was the dream assignment. Within the program, you get assigned. So I could have been assigned to like CNBC, which is a dream for, I think, many WashU alums, but I would have been very overwhelmed. So I was lucky enough to kind of stay in that comedy bubble within NBC. And I worked at SNL in 2013, 2014, and I had the chance to get to know the cast members, the writers, the producers, and it was a total dream job. So from there, my next job was I got connected with Jason Sudeikis, who had been a cast member and writer on the show for about 10 years. And he hired me to leave NBC and just work with him as his kind of personal professional assistant as he went off to dive into the world of like indie films, developing TV shows. So we worked on Detroiters, which was the Comedy Central show that you mentioned. And then I was around there for all the early stages of his Apple show that came out this year, Ted Lasso, which is super fun.
And his role as Tommy.
Exactly. And his standout role as Tommy in the Lady Liberty.
That's fantastic. If, another pre-submitted question, but if advice, I mean, what sorts of suggestions would you have for people that are interested in pursuing this field as an entertainment professional?
Yeah, so kind of two things. One, I mean, if you, so I've always played it two paths, which was kind of that first year in New York City. I was both working, 6 days a week as a page and in that SNL bubble and meeting those people. But every time whenever I wasn't there, so Sundays and then some nights earlier in the week, I would be taking classes at a comedy theater called the Upright Citizens Brigade Theater.
Sure,
and those were improv classes, sketch classes. Ultimately, I met people there, and then I was in indie, so like independent sketch groups, and just making content. And I was making a web series, and then ended up making the podcast. So I've always been of the camp of like, be in the industry and be making your own stuff if that's your goal, because I felt like I learned from WashU, networking is very important. So I've always been doing that and trying to just like meet people who inspire me, while also working with people who are at my level, who are also just as hungry to create, and doing that on no budget, but with a lot of passion. So that's kind of the advice. Like if you wanted to do anything that was like a little similar to what I did, I think going at it from both angles has always been really helpful, with the idea that like they will one day converge and you will work for Jason Sudeikis and then he will play your boss in a movie, and then your life is what is life and what is the other stuff, you know.
Art imitating life.
Art, not other stuff, but art. That's right.
I guess the other question, and you've already talked about a few of the alums and folks that were either ahead of you or kind of peers who were impactful in helping your path. How have you been involved? How have you maintained connection, or are you doing things with the kind of WashU Network?
No, I've decided that that I'm really happy with what I got, but I don't have much of an interest in passing, you know, helping others. I'm kidding. I live to talk to freshmen. I live for it. I've been doing a bunch of things basically since I left WashU, but it does feel like over the past couple of years too. Rob Morgan is on the call, and he is someone who I only got to meet, I think, like, you know, my last semester of WashU, and he's so wonderful. But he's had me come to his class the past couple of years every semester and speak to students in the drama production class. And they learn about everything. And then one random day, like they talk about stage design and all these things. And then I pop on, and it's similar to this too. It's like, I don't know what to teach you, but I can take you through this lovely slideshow that is my life. And then you can just pick and choose questions that you want to ask me after that. So I talk to this group once a semester of about 30, 40 kids. And then I end up, you know, a couple of them will reach out after, and then I'll be able to form a relationship with them. And so that's been super special. I think that's happened through 13, that's happened through Suspicious, that's happened through Kappa. I definitely a person who, like, I'll talk to any WashU student, but I feel like when I have something in common with them, or we came from that same community, it just like, I then win because I get to ask them all the gossip and find out like, well, how is this happening now? And who's in charge of this? And that is also really, really fun. So I love it. And I just got out to LA, as I said, so I'm super excited to dive more into the Hollywood community. And yeah, I think WashU people are the best.
Well, and the WashU interior design community can help with your new apartment.
What do you mean? This is a beautiful this is a knockoff Eames. This is it. This is minimalism at its best. Nothing on the walls.
Club is very excited about this. This is great. Well, good. So we're about the time, I think, where we can shift to taking some of the questions from the audience. And one that I really thought was insightful is, how do you navigate working stories of friends and family into your comedy?
Yeah, so that is a really fun question. I started with, I started with improv, but I dabbled in stand-up towards the end of WashU, early moving to New York. And by dabble, I mean I failed. It's not for me. I'm too long-winded is what I have learned. But yeah, I wasn't comfortable about talking about other people at all. I think I was just talking about myself, but myself in weird ways. So I used to say I'm very bad at it and don't do it. But then you saw Lady Liberty, and every character there is based on some version of someone in my life. So I don't know, it's really fun. And the way that I think of characters are usually like, my ideal creation of a character is like 3 different people in my life who maybe don't even know each other, who all have a similar energy combine to then create Angela, this character. And so they're all hidden. Lady Liberty, because it was so true to home, I think those characters were more like one person meets 2 people. So I ended up sharing the script with them. And, you know, that's why I think it took me, aside from my own self, growth that I needed to make Lady Liberty, it took me a couple of years to make the rounds of like sharing the script with each person and kind of telling them, hey, this is, based on that interaction that we had or that time together. How do you feel about this? And then being very nervous and freaked out about how they would react, and then ultimately them say, 99% of the time saying very nice things about it, and that they were happy that I was doing it and felt good about it. So I ended up being very honest and sharing.
Yeah, they felt honored by whatever that interaction had touched you. And
I think that's what it ended up being. I was so focused on like, how are they going to see the whatever, and ultimately they were looking at that larger picture, which is really, I think, what like a good friend does, and they were able to do that, which was really cool. That being said, if anyone wants to, write something with me in it, I will be extremely critical and tell them that if they make it, we're not friends anymore.
yeah, I can't wait to see the films that are involving Julia Lindon.
You'll never see them. I shut them down.
No, they're going to be headliners. But I think a really good question here as well. Who is your favorite character in Lady Liberty besides Shay?
Great question. There's a crowd favorite for sure. Well, there's a couple crowd favorites. Okay, but actually, one of my favorite characters in Lady Liberty, besides me, definitely not me, would be the barista. There's this very short scene where Shay and Margot walk into the coffee shop, and they're about to basically have a conversation where to break up. But it's that classic thing where you're supposed to meet at a coffee shop, but you all know what the intention is. So it's like, no, I don't want a coffee. I'm gonna feel like shit anyway. The coffee's not gonna help. But this barista who we go and order for, or don't order from, gives us this very, very sassy, like, side eye. And his name is Chris Burns, and he's like very big on Instagram, and everyone should follow at Fat Carrie Bradshaw. That is his Instagram handle, and he is fantastic.
I got sentiments of David Rose from Schitt's Creek as
my God,
watched
yeah.
that interaction. I thought he was
He's
great.
had some posts recently about, I guess he had never seen Schitt's Creek and was like, everyone keeps telling me this, everyone. And then he did, and he was like, okay, yeah, we are kind of similar.
That's good. Here's a question. How important is comedy in today's public conversation about all the weighty social and political issues we're navigating?
It's so important. And I think that comedians are also taking, I don't know, I feel like if you just look at, I don't know what's on your Instagram or anyone on this talk's Instagram, but I follow a lot of comedians, and I think they have really great platforms for, to share if there's some footage going around that like everyone really needs to see, and to just like spread the word about things that, whether it's like voting rights or violence or, a bill that's going through Congress that we need to stop. Like, I think they fill up people's feeds enough, and people are aware that if you have more than 20,000 followers, then you're someone who has a platform, and when you say things, people listen. So I think it's fantastic when people are using it in that way.
Yeah. And again, if you can do it with where it gets the point across and isn't just snark, right?
Yeah, I mean, and then a well-crafted joke. That's like the best way to get into someone's psyche, or a really sarcastic take on a political issue that is like, oh wow, they're totally made me think about it in a different way. Yeah, and I think shows out there like a John Oliver, is just like people love and get informed by, and then share and learn a ton.
Yeah, no, it's a really great way to make a point. Is there such a thing as a casual comedian? For example, someone who has a day job and does comedy as a hobby. Can one be successful in comedy without living it 24/7?
1000%, because success, let's talk about what is your definition of success there. And I think the definition of success there is like that you're doing it, it's bringing you joy, and then you also have another job that gives you lovely amounts of money and joy of stability, or also joy of enjoying whatever that is. So I think that's something that I've questioned, in a lot of ways. Like, what is being a comedian? Is it a lot of people would say like, oh, it's that you have stand-up shows and that's all you do. But when I talk more maybe about like what I do now, it's a mix of different things. It's wearing different hats. So I'm writing, I'm producing, I'm acting sometimes, I'm hosting, and am I not successful because I'm not doing that one version of it? And, telling myself that that's not true because that's not my version of success. So I think a hobby, a casual comedian, you're gonna make your partner so proud and happy. So you're the best kind of comedian to have in a family.
But it takes work. I mean, I think even in Lady Liberty, right? Shay's sitting by the pool practicing the delivery, right? She's thinking about what this is. I mean, you make it look easy, but it takes a lot of work, right?
So much. Yeah. And I think a lot of people who watch Lady Liberty miss that stuff, or they're like, what is she mumbling? What's that? And I love that you caught that. And that is so, it takes work, and it can totally she's practicing, but she's also just she knows it, but she's convinced that she's gonna forget it, and ruminating, and she's anxious for the show, and her doing well means a lot to her. If she bombs, she's not gonna wipe it off. She's gonna be affected by it because she's still early in her career where it matters so much, and she's still trying to have the audience give her that kind of approval. So yes, it 100% takes so much work, and then to get up there every night, to want your taste and your voice to evolve, to be open to feedback so that it can evolve, and that you're not just I'm perfect and everyone else is crazy and they're not laughing because they're dumb. First, no, your joke is too complicated.
Yes. So have you talked about kind of what else? I mean, you've got a lot of different things going on, but kind of what's next? What are the things you got going?
Yeah. So again, I'm so happy that I made this Lady Liberty project, because I feel like it put my voice out there. It was this pretty clean representation of I can write, I can act, and I can produce, and here's something that I want to share that's a little more polished with the world compared to a 2.5 minute web series with zero budget. So that was I feel very good about that. If we continue and make more episodes and sell it as a show, I feel even better about that. But I feel very good. And so now it's kind of, what else do I want to do? And I've definitely fallen into the world of podcasting, and it's something that I've been in for a while because of what you mentioned, my podcast, Happy Campers, that I co-host with my camp friends, and it's a celebration of all things summer camp. And that's been great. But recently I then went back to school. I did a program through a Made in New York fellowship that's a podcast certificate program, and learned all about the technical side of producing podcasts. So that's a whole new skill that I'm bringing. And there's a company out here in LA called HeadGum, and they make a bunch of really fun comedy podcasts. So now I'm kind of getting in this more behind the scenes creative role of producing a couple of their podcasts. One of them is kind of a news comedy podcast that almost feels like a Daily Show-esque thing. And then the other is a much lighthearted one called Hobby Hunter. That's all about people searching for their favorite hobbies in the pandemic, like roller skating or video games. People know about video games. So I'm producing those, and then I'm also currently writing for Spotify. They have a room of comedy writers who come up with a bunch of ideas each week for their Twitter and their TikTok to just try to spread the word about new playlists and new podcasts that they're launching. So that's been another really fun activity. And that's all kind of under the world of branded content a little bit more. So I'm just getting a taste of all these things. And when the world opens back up, I'm also hope to go back and check out the LA comedy scene of improv and potentially stand up, because I won't give up, even though I must give up on stand up.
I love it. And I saw a little bit of that in Lady Liberty as well. But you need that friend in the front row that's always going to laugh.
Yeah. Okay. That's my other favorite character. Obviously, that guy Chip is a good friend, and who he is in the show is who he is in real life. So anyone would be lucky to have a supportive friend like that.
I love it. Well, there was a selfish personal question that was asked. Speaking of things opening back up, Carol Cohen wants to know, when are you coming back to St. Louis for a visit to WashU and your favorite people?
When I get my matzo toffee in the mail. If Passover happened and Carol Cohen forgot to send me matzo toffee, I will come back as soon as people can come back to campus. Maybe this fall, if Rob Morgan will have me back to talk to his class, I will be there. I love St. Louis very, very much.
Yeah, can't wait for things to open back up and to welcome you back to campus for sure.
Thank you.
One other question that was submitted. Did you come out as a WashU student? And if so, how did that go?
Great question. I mean, it's so funny because, obviously a huge part of Lady Liberty is about, why I made it. And most of the conversations I get to have around it are about coming out and embracing LGBT community. And so it leads to the big question of well, what about WashU? And no, WashU was I was finding my voice as all those things, a comedian, a friend, a student, and I was very happy with my Sigma Chi boyfriend. If David's on the call, I love him very much. But the coming out wasn't something that happened until right after WashU, kind of very much towards the end of my senior year, started kind of realizing and thinking about that kind of stuff, and then was very much I'm going to move to New York, and I think that's the place for me to explore this. And that's how my story went. But ultimately, I came back that next year, a couple months after I graduated, to hang out with some people who were just a year below me. And I was just really, really, really touched and happy to see that there was kind of this queer community that I wasn't aware of, or was hadn't sought out and hadn't sought me out. But just seeing that was there and how that's really, really, really grown since I've graduated is awesome and makes me so happy. But it wasn't something that was top of mind and that I was kind of dealing with and pushing down and running away from as a student. But I can imagine that being extremely difficult and isolating and scary. But that was not my experience. So I had my scary, isolating times in New York City.
So when you talk about that community on campus, was that in a formal, organized way, or was it finding students? How did you come across the community coming back?
Oh, I think, not formal and organized, more people who I had just been friends with under me, who ended up kind of coming out their senior year, and then, potentially meeting each other and having friendships, having relationships. And it just made me really happy to see, because I was oh, if I had been a year behind, or if I had come out, back then, I think I would have found those people too. First, well, I hadn't looked, so it would never have worked out. So yeah, in a more informal way.
More informal. Okay.
Yeah, which is why I'm so excited to do this with WUPAN and learn more about WUPAN, because I think it is actually a relatively new organization. Or if it wasn't, then I'm sorry for not joining earlier.
Well, there is a lot of good work that's going on. And frankly, if there's anything with the pandemic, it's that it's so much easier to do on a national scale. You get people from around the country, around the world, who are able to participate in something that may have only been, in person in a city, in a place. And so I think that's, again, there are not that many silver linings of pandemics, but I do think that this virtual platform is definitely one of them. So I want to ask, in terms of, Daphne wanted to know, as you move through the world, how do you decide what's funny?
The same way you do, Daphne. Just what makes you laugh? What feels weird and odd? That person in the aisle of Target who's wearing that ridiculous hat. If that makes you laugh, then that's hilarious. I think, there's funny. There's gut funny, which is just oh my God, I feel I just watched that movie Barb and Star with Kristen Wiig, and I just huge smile, huge belly laughs for 2 hours, and just feeling so good. And then I can watch we were talking about John Oliver, one of these late night guys or gals, and think in my head, not be visibly laughing, but just think in my head, that is smart, that is funny, that is smart. And I like that too, because that's like the comedy writer in me is like, that's a good joke. That's a good joke. So I like to consume both kinds to just like feed that. And then that will help me when I'm out in the world thinking like that.
I heard somewhere they said that trying to dissect comedy is like trying to dissect a frog. In the end, both die or something like that.
Yeah, the jokes die. Yeah.
So,
but for also forever.
Exactly. Well, what is your absolute ideal job? So producer, writer, stand-up star?
No, we talked about how stand-up star is never going to happen. So I need to like
ideal
go
job,
it.
not
I know. Something of, yeah, like I guess here's an ideal job. Yeah, like writing on SNL and then going on to do like Weekend Update features where I just kind of play a version of myself going on a rant about something that is important to me. So I would love to write for other people, submit a bunch of ideas, be a part of a collaborative writing environment. At SNL, you get to actually like direct and produce the sketches that you pitch. So that I think is pretty cool because there's a lot more ownership than in the TV scripted comedy world where it's like you write your episode and then you don't really get to touch it too much in the actual creation of it. So I think that I love that idea of and then getting to still get that performance bug and act, but it's more in this. You know what? I will say that WashU really helped me find the hosting side of my performance because it was never that I was like, oh, I must play this character who's nothing like me. But I got to host freshman year. I hosted WashU's Best Dance Crew in what's the big dining hall, Danford.
Yep. And the Danforth or the
in the
what is now
the big
called
dining hall.
On the South 40 or on campus?
No, on campus.
The Danforth University Center, Tisch Commons, kind of
Yes.
with the beautiful ceiling.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
So if you didn't make it to the 2010 WashU's Best Dance Crew, Julia Lindon and Max Hamilton brought down the house, followed by 2 years later, I hosted, 1 year later, I hosted, what's the pageant, Mr. WashU with Sunny Mehta, my good friend, and it was so fun. Like I loved those opportunities, and I wouldn't never have had this. There were like 1,000 people in the crowd, and we got to like write jokes and do bits and intro people. It was so fun.
So one of the things that I'm noticing that you're talking about a lot is collaboration.
Yes,
like
huge fan.
Go it alone kind of thing, but I mean, literally, it seems like you're collaborating at every turn. And
yeah.
How has collaboration worked, or what are the challenges with that, or I'm interested in kind of your thoughts on collaboration in this space.
Yeah, I think it's great. I think I was collaboration averse from my high school experience where it was crazy competitive and no one wanted to get an A on something if it also gave an A to someone else. Like it was a toxic kind of feeling there. But then I got to WashU and people were going to study groups, and just on an academic level, they were collaborating, and I was learning and I was enjoying and I was making friends through classes that way. And that I think broke the seal so that in a creative space, I was actually open to collaboration. I found, it's like absolutely essential to all the projects that I work on now. Once, I can have the seed of idea and I can get excited about it, but I get even more excited when I find the person who's also excited about it, who is going to bring a new element, who's going to challenge me, who's going to keep me on task, who's going to bring a whole new, perspective, new jokes, new everything. So I've often said more recently that like my ideal collaborations are, a team of 3 of us. And that just feels like a really good flow of like keeping people in line. I think sometimes the one-on-one can be a little intense, but I think the 3 is like a sweet spot is something that I've learned I like a lot.
Sure. Well, in the spirit of collaboration, Sarah says, if you are hoping to focus specifically on LGBT comedy moving forward, she wants to talk. So
I would love to talk, Sarah.
We are going to put your social media stuff in the chat.
Yeah,
and
great.
So if people want to reach out to you that way, I think that could be a good way to do that. But also, we're at about 6:25. We've got about 5 minutes left, and I have to save some time for the lightning round. It's
Yes.
you're on the spot there. But I think there's a question here from David. Do you have any good tips on monetizing podcasts
Oh, great. Well, we
or
should talk.
convincing an employer of their value?
Yes, David, we should talk podcasts. That's why I like took this class. I'm like, the Happy Campers podcast I did / do is fantastic, and I love it so much. But it's like we didn't start off to make money, and so then no one gives you money. And so my tip, David, is like to think of the idea and flesh it out as much as possible. Pitch it to any and all podcast networks, and then if you can get someone on board, they will run the whole back end of ads, of sponsors, and you will get to enjoy the creation so much more. And if that's not possible, just make it for the fun of it, and maybe one day people will then pay you to make it.
No, it's amazing. It sounds like there's a lot of technical side too in what you were studying as part of this, literally the production.
I'm very tech heavy now. I've learned the skill. No, there is a lot, and I know this much, and then there's the iceberg below that I can't tell you about, but I know enough to act like I know something now.
Sure. So one Sharon is interested in having a taste of Julia's.
No, skip. You got it. This has been the taste. This is what I said, Sharon. It's like it's more about the essence than the joke. You're not going to get anything more than this.
All right. So
wait, I see a Joe Nunez question.
There is a Joe Nunez. Oh, can we scroll down? Okay.
Can we make sure that we get Molly's papa in here?
Absolutely. Okay. Sorry about that. Okay. Joe Nunez says, as a legacy 13 dad, the first father-daughter, it was great to attend 13 during your year. Any suggestions to the WashU administration to continue the carnival?
Well, the suggestion is to believe in the magic of the carnival and 13, and just look how happy 13 made me 10 years later, and yes, WashU, never give up on the party, which is life, which is a carnival, which is 13.
Well, after a 2-year hiatus from having a carnival, the only time which 13 was canceled during World War I and World War II, and now the pandemic of 2020. So we have our work to do in moving forward, but the tradition will definitely live on. So Are you ready for the lightning round?
Well, I have one joke to the piece Sharon. It came to me, and it's not even funny. Who knew that coronavirus would cancel 13? We all thought it would be Stud Life. That's a joke about how Stud Life loves to take down 13.
But that's perfect.
Ready to book me, Sharon?
You and I just see each other, but I'm sure the other 67 participants in this are laughing like crazy right now.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm kind of
okay.
All right, lightning round.
Lightning round. Texting or talking?
Talking.
What's the oddest place you've ever napped on campus?
What's that old building? It's like the women's building, and it feels really like old and special, like on the lawn there at night. Because I think like towards the last week of senior year, I was like feeling very nostalgic and wanting to connect. So I think I took a nap there at night.
So if it's overnight, is that just sleeping, or does it have to be?
I was like a night owl at WashU. I was always all hours. I was just walking around campus. That's why people always saw me just waving.
I love it, with a smile on your face. Ask for permission or beg for forgiveness?
Ask for permission. This is my biggest mistake in life. I need to learn the other.
What is the last show you binge watched?
Oh, so we're so obsessed with Drag Race. Yeah, my girlfriend and I watched Drag Race all through the pandemic.
Fantastic.
All the old seasons of RuPaul's Drag Race. They are so good.
I love it. I'll add that to the list. St. Louis food, toasted ravs or gooey butter cake?
A gooey butter.
What was your favorite 13 carnival ride?
The dick.
Moby Dick. All right. Last question. Who inspires you?
Oh my God. Good question. Oh my God. I mean, honestly, like when I was at WashU, just like all the people who were like 2 years above me, 2, 3 years above me, they just really, really inspired me and paved the path of like what I wanted to do at WashU. And I think I've always like looked up to and wanted to be friends with people who are just like a little bit in front of me. And I felt really inspired to kind of like make the most out of WashU because of some of those people. And some of them are on the call today, which makes me that much more, feel all the feels.
Well, and a good reminder for you being inspiration for those behind you. So Julia, thank you so much for your time this afternoon and for joining us for this event. To the audience, thank you all for joining us today. Happy reunion to those of you who are celebrating. Thanks again to WUPAN for sponsoring this event. As I mentioned, if you all want to follow Julia's journey moving forward, her social media information is in the chat. We look forward to seeing you all again at future WashU programs. Stay tuned for upcoming events sponsored by the WashU Alumni Association and the WashU Pride Alumni Network. And with that, Julia, that's a wrap. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you to everyone. This was so great. Appreciate it, guys. Thank you.